Number 1. This situation occurred to me when I was at the naive age of 12 years old. It was around the summertime, so I was just about finishing up my first year in junior high school. My school was pretty far from my home, so every day I had to take a bus to and from school. My aunt and mother specifically chose the same school for my cousin and I so that we could go to and from school together. Since we did not have the same schedule, the rule was to wait for each other, depending on who left school first, to take the bus together. We were not allowed to walk home from school. It was quite a distance, so they did not want us to take the risk by walking home. Unfortunately, my cousin didn't always follow that rule. He didn't see the need to take the bus with me every day and would sometimes go walking home with his friends who happened to live close to him. Most of my friends lived near our school, so I had no one to walk home with. There were times he did take the bus, though, depending on his mood, I guess. So one day, I head over to the bus stop, waving goodbye to my friends, and waited. This bus was one of the slowest buses ever and would often get so packed with people that it would skip my stop, so I usually expected to wait a while. On this day, though, the bus stop was surprisingly empty except for maybe one or two other people. It was early summer, so most students would go to the pool or go to the park right after school to hang out. Basically, everyone was walking home except me. Living in a city, New York City to be exact, exposes you to weird experiences on almost an everyday basis. I was young, naive, and seriously thought I was not likely to run into anything strange. This is probably why I never really paid much attention to my surroundings. However, after waiting at the bus stop for a few minutes, I felt strange. I felt like I was being watched. New York City on a bright summer day meant there were plenty of people around, but somewhere, someone was watching me. I could not pinpoint who or where, but it was such an unmistakable feeling. I tolerated this for a few minutes and just ignored it. If it was bad, it would have happened already. Yes, that was my stupid logic. From time to time, I would check to see if the bus was coming, but it was nowhere in sight. I guess the feeling of being watched was getting to me because I was starting to feel anxious. Right when I thought I was just being stupid, a man approached me. It was like he just appeared beside me. I didn't even feel his presence at all and jumped in surprise when he asked,
"Hey, can you help me?"
I never mentioned this, but as a 12-year-old female, I was already around 5'7", tallest of my class, and this guy was around 5'5" or so. He looked to be in about his 40s and was Hispanic like myself. He looked pretty harmless. He didn't look like he was high or drunk. He asked me this question in Spanish, to which I responded, "Sure, how can I help you?" in Spanish as well. Since he didn't look suspicious at all, I relaxed and was eager to help a person in need. He then asked,
"How do I get to Avenue B?"
I looked at him with, I assume, a very confused expression. We stood near a corner where the street sign was clearly visible. It said, Avenue B. This was obviously a red flag, even for a naive 12-year-old girl. I held back a chuckle, thinking maybe he couldn't see well, and said, "This is Avenue B." Then he looked at me for a moment and then gave me one of the most creepiest smiles I've ever seen. It wasn't warm at all. It felt wrong, like he wanted to eat me alive. I instantly felt nervous. Then he said,
"You're such a sweet girl for helping me. What's your name?"
My heart was racing at this point. "I can't tell you," I responded quickly and checked to see if the bus was coming. I thought if I brushed him off and ignored him, he would take the hint and leave. It was silent for what felt like a few hours. I looked around me, at the floor, everywhere except the area beside me. Eventually I exhaled and checked to see if he left. Nope. He was standing intently beside me with that creepy smile plastered onto his face.
If you come with me, I'll give you a nice gift,
he said, still smiling. I never hated my cousin more than I did at this moment. Of all the days he decided to walk home instead of take the bus, it just had to be the day some creep approached me. I knew I couldn't stay at that bus stop. He was persistently asking me questions. He would move his eyes up and down my body slowly. When you're afraid and basically suck at being social like I was, you would never think to ask for help. I don't know why I felt like I needed to just handle this myself, but I decided to leave this stop and walk to the stop before mine, which was about 4 to 5 blocks away, hoping to get away. I didn't even bother responding to any of his questions and just casually walked away. I was speed walking and was so grateful to have long legs. I reached the end of the first block and looked back just to be sure. He was right behind me.
Don't be shy. I just want to give you something,
he said, practically pleading. Nope, I didn't want it. I kept walking, looking through the crowd of students, hoping to spot someone I knew. No luck. So I kept walking until I finally reached the next block. The blocks were short, but felt so far apart in that moment. I had 3 left. I looked back again and he was still there, laughing like we were playing some sort of game. This guy was keeping up pace even though my strides were longer than his. He was so close. I can hear him breathing heavily. He was practically jogging behind me since he had trouble keeping up. This guy was seriously demented. There were no cell phones yet back when this happened, so it's not like I could call anyone. I didn't want to stop at a payphone to make a call so that he can catch up to me easily. I didn't want to bother asking a stranger for help either. If anything, I was paranoid. What if they did the same thing as this creep, I thought. I was an idiot. I was panicking, so at that moment I lacked common sense.
Stop walking so fast,
he said. Really? I was just about to start running when magically one of my classmates appeared. She was walking with a bunch of her friends. We had a few classes together and hardly spoke to each other at school, but I didn't care. I needed an escape. I walked straight up to her and said, "Hey, Julie, can I walk with you?" I was too excited when I asked her this, and she gave me a look that said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" but then continued to look at me. I guess the look of panic on my face was obvious, so she said, "Sure, let's go." I am forever grateful to her for reading my face so well. I walked with her quietly for a few blocks past my bus stop until she had to turn to go home. I thanked her and looked behind me once she left. He didn't follow us. I jogged to the next stop just to be sure, and the bus arrived about a minute later. I never saw him again after that day, and never told my mother anything about it until years later. I should have said something in case he preyed on someone else. I will always regret that. Number 2. It happened over 8 years ago, and I haven't told anyone about this, not even my friends or family, and it's always been in the back of my head. I was 11 when this happened, and I was in the 6th grade. By that point, my parents were living in my grandmother's house. You have no idea how hard it is to buy your own house in my country, and had been living there for the past 2 years. I was always a shy girl, so when I started in the new school, 4th grade, I made friends with the only person I knew, a boy from kindergarten. He introduced me to his gang, and after that, I would always hang out with them. I was shy, even with other girls. Something you guys should know before starting with the actual story is that I was raised from a very young age to respect the elders. My mom always saw elders as cute and adorable, and as a result, so did I. Still do to this day. My point is, if I meet someone who's in his/her mid-50s or older, I'll trust him or her by default. It doesn't matter if he or she is a stranger or not. So one of the kids from the gang, let's call him Nate, used to live in this huge co-op. And when I say huge, I mean huge. It was a neighborhood on its own. It was also surrounded by metal fences, so it was really safe. We would hang out there pretty much every day after school. Given that I was a girl, they never played football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, it's fine, for too long. Instead, we invented this hybrid version of tag and hide and seek. One of us would count for 10 minutes. That's how big the co-op was, while the rest would go and hide anywhere we wanted. The rest of it was like a tag game, so if you got caught with no exit, you were screwed. The first one to get tagged had to do the tagging in the next round. Some of the apartment buildings were 3 stories tall, with the higher apartments being accessible from a concrete skywalk erected between 2 stairs. The skywalk was connected to the balconies of the apartments. The balconies were one of my favorite hiding spots. So one day, as usual, I went to hide in one of the balconies and crouched behind the balcony wall, which put me right in front of one of the apartments. After a while, my friend Jay, who was doing the tagging, reached the skywalk connected to my hiding spot. While I'm popping my head from time to see where he was, I hear the window of the apartment behind me open and the voice of an older male.
Hey, sweetie, you're playing hide and seek.
Yes, I responded. I tried to be as nice as possible, but all I was thinking was, this guy is going to give away where I am. Stupid, I know, but again, I trusted the elders, and also I was 11. Looking back on it, he was probably watching me with the window closed for who knows how long. That creeps me out to no end. After he talked to me, I turned around and took a look at him. He looked like he was in his 60s. He had gray short hair, was wearing a t-shirt, and had a big creepy smile on his face.
You can hide inside if you want to. I've got cookies,
he told me. He was almost whispering, like he was playing along with me. I responded with a delayed, "No thanks," and turned around again to look at Jay. No alarms going off in my head yet, but I was not going into some stranger's house, even if he was a grandpa. I wasn't that stupid. Then I hear the door open, which was right next to the window. He comes out and stands right next to me, looking at me. He was wearing some cargo shorts, and I moved a little to the left. His crotch was way too close to my head. Jay was also pretty shy with strangers, so I assumed that he saw the man. He didn't even try to go to the balcony and look for me. I was crouching behind the balcony and I couldn't see him. I heard Jay go down the stairs. It was concrete and he was running, so it was pretty loud. And this is when things got out of hand. While I was peeking my head over the balcony, photobomb style, I feel his hands in my torso, around my ribs. It was so weird. It wasn't a grip, and he wasn't trying to pick me up. He was just laying his hands there, right below my breasts, almost touching them. I turned around, and his face was right next to mine, and I mean really close, like kissing distance. I got up immediately, trying not to touch him, while he said something. I don't know what exactly, but I remember it was something about my hair with the word nice in it. I'm blonde, and that's pretty unusual in my country, so I guess that caught his attention. I got out of there walking really fast and looked at him. He was just smiling. I went down the stairs, and I saw Jay, who saw me and came running full speed to tag me. He did, and then he noticed how rattled I looked. I told him I didn't feel well and that I was going home. He told me he would tell the others, and then kept playing, looking for them. The walk home felt twice as long as it always did. I was turning around every 5 seconds to see if the guy was following me. Thankfully, he wasn't. It was physically painful, too. I was nauseous, dizzy, breathing really quickly, and I felt like I had a lump in my throat. By the time I got home, I was so exhausted, I went to bed immediately. It was around 6 p.m., with no explanation to my grandma whatsoever. My dad woke me up a few hours later for dinner, after arriving home from work. We had the tradition of watching Get Smart on TCM while having dinner, and he's a creature of habit, so no way I was getting out of that one. That night, I thought so much about telling my parents, but in the end, I decided not to. My dad was too overprotective. Still is. I'm 20 now. And my mom dramatic. I was enjoying the fact that I could go places alone too much and didn't want to give that up. I never saw the man again, thank goodness. We continued playing that game with my friends, but I never went close to his house again. No more balconies. No chance. Number 3. I've only told this story to my boyfriend, and he suggested writing about it might help. It's really hard for me to think about, even harder to talk about. I'm hoping putting my story out there instead of holding it in will help me move on. This occurred when I was 14. I'm 21 now. It was October, and my family was at a campground in Vermont for a long weekend. My family is Native American, and it was the second year in a row that we had gone to this particular powwow, which is a Native gathering. This one is open for anybody to come, Native or not, during the day. We brought a camper because it was cold that time of year, especially with the wind coming off the lake. Anyway, it was the first day of the powwow, and I walked from my campsite to the clearing where the dancing and drumming would be in my regalia, my traditional Native American dress. When I got there, I saw my father talking to a man who was also in regalia, but I didn't recognize him. The second he saw me approach, he started watching me in a way that weirded me out. I was instantly uncomfortable with the way he looked at me, but I was raised to see the best in people, so I ignored it. Within seconds of meeting me, he asked me to tie these leather bracelets around his wrists. I got the impression that he asked me to do it instead of my father, so that I would have to touch him. But I did it despite this feeling. As the morning went on, I felt him watching me everywhere I went. At one point, he came up to me and said that he'd seen my picture from the year before, and that he knew it was me from my dress, which was in fact unique, and my hair. Please note that I'm adopted by a Native American family, and I have red hair and snow-white skin, so I tend to make an impression at these gatherings based on how I look. He told me he came because he saw the picture. This gave me a twisted feeling in my gut. He saw my picture the year before and came this year to see if I was here again? I was pretty innocent and naive back then, but this just screamed bad news to me. I started avoiding him as best I could, but he went from watching me to following me over the next 2 days. It got to the point where I wouldn't even walk back to my camper alone because he'd followed me there once already. Everywhere I turned, there he was. Following me turned into making me dance with him. There was a lot of dancing at these gatherings, and it is disrespectful to refuse, especially to your elder, so I complied. At the end of the day, I started to leave to go back to my campsite, and he stepped in front of me, grabbed my face, and pressed his forehead and nose to mine, like an intimate moment between a couple in love. Picture a Nicholas Sparks movie poster, only against my will. I felt so disgusted being touched by him and held like that I missed the first part of what he said to me. I was too busy thinking about grabbing my decorative knife from my waist and stabbing him in one of those creepy eyes that told me exactly what he wanted. And if his eyes didn't already spell out the fact that he wanted me in a way no middle-aged man should ever want a 14-year-old girl, he practically told me so. He said,
"I'll be missing you tonight."
And then he let me go. I almost threw up right then from panic. Honestly, I don't remember why I didn't tell my parents that I thought he was going to try to rape me. Because I did think that. I was certain. But with my family, I thought I would be safe. They knew something was up, though, because that night they asked if the man had tried to hurt me. I said no, because it was true, but I didn't go to sleep that night. Terror and panic kept me awake. That and the feeling I was being watched. I felt like the man was right outside the camper. It was my intuition that kept me awake. I just knew that if I closed my eyes, something bad would happen. I kept thinking I heard sounds at the window and by the door. I told myself it was my fear making me imagine things. And then I heard the jiggle of the lock being picked. I knew this was real. This was not in my head. The soft pop of the lock giving way and a small breeze from outside told me that this was actually happening. My panic choked me so much that what should have been a blood-curdling scream from my mom was a strangled cry. I told her that he was here, that he popped the lock. She tried to ignore me in favor of sleep and say it was a dream, but my terror alarmed her, and she went to the door. Sure enough, the door was open, swinging in the breeze, the man long gone because of my immediate scream for help. My mom told my dad what happened, and we relocked the door, but I don't think anyone slept. The next morning, no one talked about it, and the man was nowhere to be seen. No police were called, which was shocking to me because my dad was an ex-Army guy and a current cop. If anyone would have followed up on this guy, it was him. I've always wondered if he and my older brothers had taken matters into their own hands. Everyone knew about it, but nothing was said. Ever. It's been 7 years, and it's never been brought up. I always wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had a gut feeling that kept me awake. We were all heavy sleepers. I never would have heard the lock being picked. I always wonder what his plan was after getting in the camper. He couldn't get to just me without having to deal with my family. My boyfriend thinks that the only thing a guy that determined could have done at that point was kill my family as they slept and do what he wanted with me. A dark part of me hopes that my dad and brothers did do something about it, and that the sick bastard is at the bottom of that lake. But they are good people and would never do that. He's caused me years of lasting trauma and terror that I can't escape. To this day, I obsessively check locks before going to bed. I avoid looking out the peephole, terrified of what I'll see on the other side of the door, waiting for me. I've gone so far as to check the closets when I'm in my apartment alone. I don't know what I expect to find, but I always have to check for him anyway. It's been 7 years, and because I never knew what happened after that night, I still fear him. He waited a whole year to find me at that powwow, obsessively stalked me for 2 days, and then disappeared. CreepyMina here of the Worst Nightmare channel. I hope you enjoyed those 3 stories of women's experiences with predators when they were young girls. Always remember to be aware of your surroundings and don't be afraid to ask for help. If you have a true crime or paranormal story that you'd like to hear narrated on this channel, you can send me email to creepymina@gmail.com, or you can submit your story to the new subreddit WillingStories, where any other horror channel creator can use it on their channel. Please give me a thumbs up, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and remember to stay safe.